Val, welcome to Harvey County Digital.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you for coming. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff, so I'm really excited to have you here. And I just want to say real quick, thanks to our sponsors, Remax, locally owned brokerage, and then Sand Creek Summer Days. They got a deal going 15th and 16th here for our community. You guys are a huge sponsor of that.
Yes, we are.
So thank you for supporting these events that we do. It means a lot to us as a community. And also, I'm doing the 5K. What is it called, Michelle? The Sizzling Summer Days something? There's a 5K run, walk, roll, they call it. So if you guys are out there and you want to get involved, please, there's still spaces. So go online, get your tickets. We'd love to see you out there. I'm going to be out there, and I'm running and practicing for that one, so that'll be cool.
They put us on notice to be at the finish line for resuscitating Andy.
Did you do that last year?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I thought I saw a picture of you in there, so I'm really excited about that one. So yes, please bring what do you call those paddles?
Indeed, defibrillators.
Bring them.
Yeah.
I'm going to need it. But no. Hey, well, Val, thank you for coming. We want to cover a few different things. And one, thank you for your leadership and what you bring to our community. It's huge. And I love that my daughter has examples and my son of people like yourself who step up and lead, and you take the hard jobs and the hard positions and you work hard for it. And so one of the things we want to do is humanize our leaders in Harvey County and just let people know that, hey, we're all just people. And you're a person just like the rest of us. And you're very approachable, and thank you for spending the time to come and sit with us, and out of your busy schedule and all the responsibilities that you're stewarding, you're here with us today. And that means the world to me. So I don't want to waste your time, and I want to make this valuable for our community and you. And so thank you for your team and the staff to help put all this together.
You are welcome.
And so we want to talk about Woman of the Year. We're going to talk about leadership, and then we want to talk about Newton Medical Center, and then just get to know you a little bit as a person, where you come from, what builds, what's the makeup of Val, and what does she embody, right? Where does this come from? The drive and all the expertise and the years of experience to be and do what you do today. So first, we like to start with a Mad Minute. So it's a little warm up between me and you to get a little comfortable here. And so we're going to go through some questions. And so just fire them out. Mad Minute usually lasts 5 minutes, but we'll go ahead and say Mad Minute. So Val, what's your favorite color?
Coral.
Coral.
Any
specific reason?
It's a happy color.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it looks good on everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. That's the first. That's cool. What's your favorite sport or hobby? Is there anything you like to do?
I like Cleveland Browns football. The Browns shall rise again.
Nice.
Let's put the world on notice.
Nice.
Yes. I like Cleveland Cavaliers basketball.
Okay.
Cleveland Indians baseball. Can you tell I'm from northeastern Ohio?
It was coming to me.
And so I like to watch those.
That's good to know.
I like to. I'll root for the Royals.
Okay.
As long as they're not playing the Indians. So I told my husband last night, from now for the next few hours, we're enemies.
Oh, right on.
He's a Royals fan.
Okay.
And what do I enjoy doing? I like to read. I like to learn. And I like to work.
Oh, wow. I'm not surprised at any of that. So we'll get deeper into that here in a bit. Muscle car or like a luxury sedan? Where are you at on that scale?
What I wish I had? A 1976 Dodge Charger, all amped up.
Wow.
You know, with one of those things on the hood.
Yeah.
And big exhaust on both sides.
Just the American muscle car.
Ooh.
That's awesome.
That's
76
a beautiful
Dodge
car.
Charger.
Black.
And you even have the year
Black.
down.
Yeah.
Black.
Yeah.
Is it like, do you like the shiny black or like the
car.
matte black?
No, shiny black.
Shiny black.
Yeah.
So you're more of the
all
classic
chromed up
look.
And
More traditional. Right on. What's your go-to order at your favorite restaurant here in town?
I like salmon at Size. I like chicken curry at Bella Luna. I like the child's order of spaghetti at Genova's.
Genova's, yes. So you got 3 good sides. That's out in Sedgwick.
It's in Sedgwick.
And they have amazing chicken fried steak out there.
Yes, they do.
Yes, and a big guy like me knows where that's at.
You don't want to order one because you'll be eating it for 4 days.
Oh, man, that's so sad. I can crush it in one sitting. So last question. Is there a special space in Harvey County that you've grown to appreciate that you like to go to and that just does something for you?
This is going to sound weird, but I like First Street headed over to Butler County.
First Street, headed over to Butler. Why?
It's pretty.
Just the drive.
It's
and
pretty. It's hills. It's green or golden.
Right.
It reminds me of home.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Cleveland. So I didn't know that.
Akron.
Akron. Okay.
I'm actually from Akron. I grew up in a little town called Atwater out in southern Portage County, kind of south of Kent, the infamous Kent State, in that area.
Okay. So it's
That's
very
home.
reminiscent
Grew
of
up on
home.
a little farm out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And how many people were in the town you grew up in, ballpark?
At that time, probably 2,500.
So it's a small town.
Small town.
Wow. And welcome to the big city of Newton.
Yeah, thank you.
So cool. Hey, well, I want to jump into one thing right away. You were nominated in one of the several requests. People were like, you should talk to Val, see if she'll come on. And so thank you for doing this. Woman of the Year. You were nominated for Woman of the Year, one of 3 amazing women this year that got nominated. Can you tell me about that experience and what that meant to you?
First of all, I'm a person that believes awards are for other people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I just see myself as somebody that goes to work every day, does my job.
Right.
So it was surprising and shocking to get the phone call and to know that I was going to be among people that have really made indelible impacts on the Newton community for decades.
That's right.
And I said in my speech that day, they're big footsteps to follow. A lot is expected.
Right.
And so I was honored and humbled and thought that perhaps maybe there were other people in the community that could have been tapped.
Right.
I didn't know what I had done particularly to deserve it.
Well, that's amazing, and it says a lot about your humility and your humble spirit and everything else, because you do amazing work, and there are many, many amazing women, and the fact that we're highlighting you guys now, and the men and women that move and take the arrows, if you will, and move forward, and the people that surround them. A person like yourself, you get there with your team, and I know you know that, but it's just amazing that all of you guys have the same sentiment that earn those things. From as a community person, thank you for doing that. And there's an underlying theme with leaders like yourself, and it's always that piece is always in the forefront, the humility and the humble spirit. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Nobody gets there alone.
Right.
And particularly when you're the leader of an organization, it's really not you. It's the people who work with you, that are pulling that same yoke in the same direction. It's awesome.
So having the lead from a 10,000 foot view like that, can you share some of your thoughts on that and what that feels like every day?
Well, I think it's fun to go to work. And people will say, "How are you today?" "I'm great." It's a great day because I'm here with you. And the people at work do amazing things. In the health world, I recognize as a leader, maybe everybody doesn't, but my philosophy is this. Especially in healthcare, people often know that they're spiritually called to their work. It is evident in physicians, nurses, social workers, food service personnel, even our housekeeping staff. They'll often tell us, "I know this is what I was meant to do with my life." I've talked to people who are in their late 40s, early 50s. They've gone back to school. They've gotten new degrees. Maybe I've encountered this mostly in nursing. They've gotten a nursing degree later in life. And I'll always say to them, "Why did you do that?" "Well, because I knew when I was 20 I should have, but I chose another road. And I realized that by choosing another road, it wasn't satisfying.
Right.
So I needed to go back.
Right.
And I needed to satisfy that yearning." And so that's something I don't take for granted in people who work with us at the hospital, because in doing that, what that person is saying to us is, "Today I'm bringing you the best of who I am. And not only that, I'm bringing you what I was created to do."
Wow.
This is what my life is supposed to be. And so we talk about that in management and leadership at the hospital. How you could, by abusing that, knowing and that calling, whatever you want to call that spiritual connectedness of your people.
Right.
If you in leadership abuse that, disrespect it in any way, who is it that you are really disrespecting? And
Wow.
I think it's a deep question. And our management staff really takes that to heart.
Wow.
I think we have a good team that understands people's creation stories and what they're meant to be doing with their lives. And we want to do everything we can to make it possible for them to succeed at that. Because they're gifts to the patients every day. You can't replace that.
That's right. That's powerful.
So I often challenge our folks, take a look at the end of your day. What is it today that you got to do that maybe nobody else in the world could have done as well as you did? Don't you think there's a particular reason that you were there in that moment with that patient in that situation? I'll often tell the story of my granddad. So if I might?
Absolutely. Please.
Okay.
I'm tunnel visioned right now. This is...
My grandfather was quite elderly, 92, 93 years old, and he fell one morning in his basement, hit his head on the floor, and bled into his brain. And he was always quite certain about, he didn't like hospitals, he didn't like doctors, he didn't like the whole idea of medical interventions. He was just a simple man from the hills of Alabama who moved north, to start a business and get a good start in life for his young family. So he really eschewed the medical establishment. So we knew when his time came how he would want to be treated. So I was living in Kansas. Of course, my family's in northeastern Ohio. My parents gave me a call one night and they said, this has happened to your grandfather and he's bled into his brain. He is still conscious and he is still talking to people, but we came home. Mom and Dad, you're like 40 minutes from the hospital. You need to go back. They said, why? I said, because I'm just telling you, you need to go back. He won't make it. So they got in the car and they drove back.
Right.
In the meantime, in that hour and a half period that they were gone, he summoned a nurse into his room. The nurses told my mother this story later because by the time they got back there, he was gone. And so they said a nurse who was walking down the hall, he was not her assignment. He was not on her team of patients. He summoned her into the room. And so she went in and he said, would you sing to me? Well, of course I will. What would you like to hear? Well, I would like to have you sing this hymn and this hymn. He kept naming hymns. She knew them. She knew all the verses. But they were hymns from the very old Presbyterian hymnal that he used to sing out of in Alabama when he was a child.
Wow.
Who knew those hymns anymore? Who knew all verses of those hymns? She did. And she sang them to him. And then she went off to take care of her own patients. And shortly after that, he just died. So I'll never forget her.
Right.
I never did get to go thank her. But I'll bet you in various speeches, ceremonies, and now here,
Yes.
I bet I've told thousands of people her story.
Wow.
And she was there in a moment, giving only, obviously, what I believe only she could have given him that night. And so that's what I call the special sauce, that's required in the work that we do.
Wow.
Those are tender moments. Those are sacred moments. And at Newton Medical Center with our staff, you find that every minute of every day. We had a patient I would say within the last few years, who was dying and wanted a particular thing to eat. And we didn't have it in the cafeteria that day. So his daytime nurse went home and cooked that for him and brought it back. And he had a few bites, and that was the last thing that he had to eat. But those are the kind of people that we crave to have in healthcare.
Wow.
And so when we lead those kind of folks in our organizations, it's creating a place where they're safe to express that. That's important to me.
Man, that's such a deep level of service, much deeper than I expected. So thank you for pulling on that cord, because I don't think I've had a deeper interview yet. And granted, there's a lot of different professions, but I like to say that, when I have a bad day, or when me and Devin and the teams of people I work with, when we have a bad day, nobody passes, nobody dies. It's not as real and as finite to us as it is to you guys and your team, and dealing with that on all different types of levels. You see it every day almost, would you say, or weekly?
We see it frequently.
Frequently.
Maybe not every day.
Okay.
But frequently. Yes.
But the chances there were fault or a bad day for you guys, somebody can pass away. I mean, that's a bad day. And that's like the ultimate. That's so finite. And so to know that you guys are as present as you are, given that load as well, and balancing that, because you have to think that you have to protect yourselves. Me being in social service work for social services for so many years, as we talked before we got going, loving on those kids.
Yep.
It's just tough, when you build those relationships and you have those connections with people. Can you talk to me about where you get that leadership model and where that's coming from? Because that is amazing, actually. And I'm so blown away that our community is functioning at that level, at that facility, when it comes to presence and leadership and being aware. Where is this model? Where is this coming from?
The hearts of people. There's only one place for it to come. So what we try to do at the hospital is be very intentional about who we hire. Who are we going to bring into our organization, and why? Because we can teach the technical parts of the job. We can teach somebody how to pass instruments in the operating room. Someone who's had a basic knowledge in a curriculum in a technical school comes prepared to pass instruments in an operating room. We can teach our new employees how to do that for a particular doctor who has a particular preference. Those kind of skills are easier to find than the skills of the heart. And so we look for the skills of the heart and the skills of service. And our hospital is full of people who that's what they live for. And it makes a rewarding place to work, but it also makes it an easy place to go to work.
Right. Wow, what a team. Thank you guys.
We're lucky.
That. You are lucky. And for nurses out there that are going to hear this, I mean, wow, if you have heart and you love people and you want to serve and looking for those special opportunities to give to somebody in some of their hardest times, I mean, what a place to be.
Well, we say this in orientation. We have orientation for new employees once or twice a month, depending. And I'll always congratulate the people who've earned a job with us, because I think it's hard to get a job at Newton Medical Center because we don't take every applicant. We don't take just any applicant. We want the right applicant for the job.
Right on.
And so it's fun to listen to their stories in orientation. Why do you think we hired you?
Right.
And people are often, a little reluctant at first. But if I sit there long enough, here it will come tumbling out. A person who talked to me just on Monday said, I'm compassionate, and I know I'm compassionate. Here are all the ways that I know I'm compassionate. And I was able to say that in my interview. I love patients. I love working with their families. I love the science. I love everything about it. That's the kind of person we want at our hospital.
That's great. And you stewarding that forward and being able to package that and tell that story is huge. Who was Val as a kid? Tell me about Val as a young girl. What did that look like?
I am the oldest of 6 children, 3 girls, 3 boys. So my mother had me when she was 19, and she had number 6 when she was 25. So she was busy.
Yeah.
We calculated, she recently passed away, so we calculated it when we were all sitting around afterwards, that she must have washed and boiled about 40,000 cloth diapers in those years. But, when you have a cluster of children so close together, the older ones have to help the younger ones. So my assignment was always the baby Ray, W-R-A-Y. He's my baby brother. And so I spent a lot of time nurturing him and taking care of him, and then taking the blame for what the other 5 would do.
Right.
I got punished a lot for, well, they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're the oldest. You should know better than to let them do that. So they ran a tight ship, Mom and Dad did.
So this was probably where this responsibility piece comes for you, to take responsibility all the time.
From a very young age. Yeah. I worked a lot, but I oversaw them, and felt like that was my responsibility, because in a lot of ways it was. Mom needed a hand. But, we had a great time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have traded that for anything.
Right.
5 little brothers and sisters was fun.
So you were busy with Mom.
Yep.
Yeah.
There were a lot of years we all rode the school bus together. So 6 of us would be out there, on the road waiting for the school bus to come. It was great.
Right.
It was great. We all got along. And I asked Mom and Dad later, because they were strict disciplinarians, especially on the older ones. As the younger ones came up, and maybe they were a little more lax with them, as parents often are. But Mom and Dad, why were you so hard on us? My dad said to me, I knew if I ever lost control of you, I would lose control of the other 5. So you were going to mind me. I said, yeah, but you made a lot of threats when I was growing up. And I said, what would you really have done? He says, I have no clue.
Yeah.
He said, I just worked my plan by keeping you under threat and under thumb all the time. But it was, and, I don't mean to sound like we had a house that was just strictly all disciplinarian.
Right.
We had a good amount of fun.
Right.
But there had to be some sense of order, I suppose, to having 6 kids underfoot at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So they did a good job.
Yeah. Well, and that sounds smart. I mean, the hierarchies and building that into you, and you were building it into your siblings as well, because you were a disciplinarian, I'm sure, to a certain extent, keeping them in line.
I was their disciplinarian. In fact, they tell me stories now, the younger ones. You were so rough on us, and, you worked us over a little bit from time to time. Yeah. But that's what you do.
Right.
You got to keep the little brothers and sisters in line. There has to be a certain sense of discipline.
Somebody's got to do it.
For a big sister. Yeah.
So you sound like you were responsible really young.
Yep.
Moving into high school, what did that look like for you?
Responsible. And, our folks just had high expectations of the 6 of us. Mm-hmm. There was an expectation to exceed. There was an expectation to study. There was an expectation to not only achieve, but to excel. And Mom and Dad were really good at that. They were very inspirational people. My parents were both athletes, and my father was a superstar athlete in Ohio when he was in high school. And we counted when he died in Mom's cedar chest, there were 15 letters, athletic letters. So he lettered in 3 sports a year, all 4 years, in a large inner city high school.
Right.
And he was just a beast of an athlete, from what I understand. And so he knew what it took to compete at that level. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my mother was even when she was in the care home in her late life, the activity director said to us, my sister and I think, well, your mom is functioning at a pretty high order, even though she had dementia. He said, so we'll get some games out and we'll play some games. I said, like what? And he said, some various board games and some timed games and vocabulary. And I just started laughing. I said, well, you can do that with her.
Right.
Prepare to be defeated badly.
Competitive.
Yeah.
Big time.
And he said, God, you are right. He called me in Kansas one day. He said, I just tried to play some games with your mom. She isn't in it just to win. She's in it to grind you into the ground.
Nice.
Yeah, that was my mom.
Competitive nature.
So that's what they expected of us. Get in there and compete.
Forced to deal with both of them.
Right. Don't just give 100%. You have to give 120%.
Wow.
The next guy's only willing to give 100%. You've got to give 120%. Do you understand? Yes. Sir and ma'am, yes. We get it. But they raised 6 strong kids.
Right. And expectations was go to college, or was that an expectation, or was it just to go out and do well in your perspective, whatever you chose to do?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. Because I desperately wanted to go to college my whole life. But that isn't something that mom and dad aspired for their daughters. I think they thought we should grow up, get married, have families, and call it good.
Traditional in that time, in that era, the traditional sense. So they were very traditional.
They were behind their time in the era.
Ah.
Because that was in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
That they were late on the scene, I think, for having that outlook for their daughters. So most of us went to college. Most of us graduated from college, and a couple of us got master's degrees. But that was not anything that they thought was useful.
So to be a CEO of a hospital was not something they were pushing you to do at that stage. They just wanted you to be a steward of a family and kind of do that traditional robe and take care of things.
In fact, my father was like his dad. What do you want to be a nurse for? Don't think this will be good for you. Don't think you'll like it. You're going to quit. You're,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then but he came to he helped me. He helped me go through nursing school. With a lot of pleading.
Right.
And then when I went back to school and finished a bachelor's in business administration and a master in business administration, he came to my graduation when I got my bachelor's degree. He drove out here from Ohio so he could come to my graduation.
Right.
And he was too feeble to come to my master's graduation by then. And it was in the middle of winter. I couldn't ask him to come.
Right.
But he was disappointed not to be there. So in the end, he saw the value of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was super supportive once you kept to your grind, and he kind of knew.
Yeah.
It sounds like growing up, he knew that he couldn't lose control of you. I think there's other reasons for that with your temperament and who you've become.
Probably.
And once you get on your track, you're on your track.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he knew you were on the right track for you.
Yeah, and, I knew he was proud in the end. When my sister and I went to Florida to go through his things when he died, one of the last pieces of mail I sent him was, the notice saying that I'd been promoted to CEO of the hospital. And it was all folded up neatly and tucked away in his top underwear drawer. I mean, where do you put the most precious things in your life? In your top underwear drawer. That's where it was.
Wow.
So sweet.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about, so you get into college, you're going, you nurse, was that your target right away to become a nurse?
Yep. That's all I ever wanted to be was a nurse.
So this
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Bit,
I felt that too. I have my daughter
here.
too. So that's, and this is good.
Yeah, I miss my dad.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful thing. And I'm sorry, I got emotional too, because I can, we all do this thing together.
Yep.
And,
life is funny that way, isn't it?
It is. And for you to be able to honor him by talking about his athleticism and his his competitiveness and him and your mom as a team working for you, and then for the pride at the end of the day for him to have that in his drawer. That's an amazing moment. So thank you for sharing.
It's very sweet.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So moving forward through that, and knowing these strong roots you have, what did they do? What did they do for a living? Your parents?
My dad worked in a gas station. He pumped gas.
Yeah.
And he washed windshields and he changed the oil.
That's right.
Right.
He's probably great at it.
I loved it when Mom would, drive the car in and Dad would come out, pump the gas in the car, wash the windshield. We used to marvel at how clean he got the windshield.
Yeah.
I can't get my windshields that clean today.
Right.
He'd just take a spray bottle and then wipe it with a, rag, and it'd be beautiful. Maybe the glass was different then. Oh. Eventually, so in the middle of all of that, Mom and Dad are having 6 children. He's working at the gas station. They buy this little farm out in rural, Portage County. To the great consternation of my mother's family, who thought, you cannot take those 6 children out into the country and expect them to get a good education.
Right.
They will never be able to graduate from high school. They'll never make anything of themselves because they won't be able to learn anything because that's just a little country school. Mom and Dad moved out there anyway. 45 acres, completely tore the house that was on the acreage down to the rafters, and rebuilt it, rewired it, replumbed it. Dad was out there in the middle of the Ohio winter, pickaxing and hauling out in wheelbarrows the basement that he dug underneath it and a fruit cellar that he dug underneath it, laid up the cinder blocks. Man. There you lay up cinder blocks. You don't pour basements up in that part of the country. So cinder blocks he laid up as soon as it thawed and he could mix the concrete. He did everything. They did everything by hand. Everything. They were 2 beasts. That's all I could say.
And you were left with kind of helping watching for the kids while this was going on?
We did, or we played. We had a great time out there.
Yeah.
And so they built this house for a couple of years. Turns out it was an old Sears and Roebuck catalog house that they tore down to the rafters. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
So he rebuilt it. And 2 years later, after my 2nd grade, we moved out to the farm.
Okay.
We moved out to the farm. After we lived there a while, number 5 in line, Carl, said, why don't we ever drive to the farm anymore? He was kind of lost. He didn't realize we were at the farm.
Yeah.
But it was a great place to grow up. We did have a little country school.
Yeah.
When I was in the 8th grade, it was consolidated. Here they call it unified. There they call it consolidating.
Okay.
So we were forced to consolidate with Randolph next door. And so our arch enemies in every sport, and suddenly we were going to school together. Mm-hmm. And they built a brand new high school. So when I was a freshman in high school, we started in the brand new high school. Right. It was a complete luxury. And we got wonderful teachers. For some reason, this new consolidated school district was really able to bring in high-minded talent. So we had courses that most high schools don't usually have.
Wow.
Shakespeare. We had 4 years of Latin. We had 4 years of Spanish. We had 4 years of French. There were a lot of things in that little country school, and everybody got to do something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was sports and it was band. And so if you weren't an athlete on the field, you were in the band. So we had a school of 400 kids, and we marched 110 kids in our band. Wow. It was awesome.
That is awesome. It was awesome. It was a community.
Everybody got to be, and all the parents were there, and all the parents in the community were your parents, and your parents were everybody else's parents. And so if you ever stepped out of line, your parents knew before you got home because Mrs. Boyd probably called,
Yeah.
our mom and let her know
Right.
what we'd been doing,
Right.
But it was that kind of growing up. It was a very strong sense of community and talent in the school district that really made everybody great, made everybody really good. It was challenging. It was so much fun. It was a great growing up. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Absolutely. I know we're trying to find that vibe here. People that are working in this community and leaders like yourself and others who are sharing all this information and building strong communities and leaders and putting programs together so people can be stewarded appropriately into the right positions and know what that really means with responsibility. Where do you think that fabric, and this is totally off the cuff, I don't know if you'd be comfortable talking about this or not, but where do you think the fabric has gone for how you grew up and to where things are at today? Even me as an individual, I have friends that have children that were really close. There's like 3 or 4 of us that we kind of been close since college, and we are very mindful of our kids being with each other and what we do when they're here. And we might have some different rules than my other friend, but we know what those rules are between each other. So there's certain video games my son can play that I know his kids don't mess with for different reasons, and everybody's different. So we know that's just not something we do when they're here. But to grow that as a community, you were like 400, kids. It's a bunch of families, and you guys all kind of were on top of each other and growing with each other and involved. What do you think the difference is between today and then, and what are we losing? Where is that fabric getting torn, in your opinion?
I've been asked that question a number of times, and it's a tough one.
Okay.
I don't think it's any one thing. And in some ways, I think the strong families still raise strong children. Like you. You know where your children are. You know who their friends are. You know who their friends' parents are. You know what the expectation of your children's friends' homes are. You socialize with each other. That's the backbone of a good home for a child. Where kids learn early on that what goes, as a rule at our house is the same rule at the Boyds, and it's the same rule at the Bartletts, and it's the same rule wherever you are, because you're with like-minded individuals. Those families expect their children to excel in school just like our parents did.
Right.
I think that society is still full of these kinds of families. I'm sorry that there are children that grow up in homes where that's not their reality. I think those children have always been with us. I knew who I should socialize with at school and who I shouldn't.
Right.
Because there were some rascals.
Right.
Even when I grew up, and my dad talked about some, and mother talked about some of the rascals that they went to school with. And so I don't know that there's an easy answer to that.
Right.
Some people say it's because children aren't taken to church anymore. Some people say it's cell phones. Some people say it's disinterested parents. I don't know.
Right. So
all I do know for myself is that it's a job to raise a child. It's unrelenting. It's never ending. It is omnipresent from the minute you find out you're pregnant until hopefully they're 21 or 22 years old and leave home, able to stand on their own 2 feet. People ask my husband and I, how are your children? Tell us about your kids. I'll tell you about my kids. All 4 of them are grown up and they pay taxes. That in and of itself says a lot.
That's right.
They hold down jobs. They've gotten themselves to where they need to be, and they pay their taxes and pay their bills. For a time, my folks retired to Florida, and they lived in a place that you had to be 55 years old to buy into. And Mom said, you would be shocked at the number of people who live in this complex. It must have been 300, 400 homes. And she said, when the Social Security checks come out come the checkbooks, and the elders are writing checks to their adult children. Now, if you're an elder who's over the age of, say, 60, how old are your kids by then? Still on the dole with mom and dad. That's a bad position to be in as an adult. Because our job as adults is to stand on our own 2 feet, get a job, and pay our taxes.
Nice.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the work of life. And so parents who are raising their children to do that are doing probably some of the most important work they'll ever do.
That's a great goal and a great message for our community and for parents like myself that want to hear from leaders that are out there and that have those values. And it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to expect that from each other. And we must expect that from each other, in my opinion. Yeah.
You know, we told our kids when they were growing up, my husband and I each brought 2 children to our marriage. We just celebrated 30 years anniversary of marriage. We would tell our 4 children, you're going to encounter 2 kinds of people, mostly when you get to adulthood. You will encounter the people who have a strap around their shoulders and they're pulling with force every day. That's the person you want to be. Because you're going to be pulling a sled full of, maybe by the time you're adults, you could be pulling 200 to 250, 300 people behind you on your sled that for some reason either can't, they're disabled, they're too frail elderly to do it alone, or they won't. Here's your job. Your job is to equip yourself to pull the sled. Don't ever get on the sled.
That's beautiful.
That's your job. So when I say they pay taxes, they're pulling the sled.
Thank you.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Fight to not get on that sled.
Right.
That's
Don't get on the sled.
That's so good. One of the things I wanted to discuss with you is I have friends that talk about all different kinds of things, and Woman of the Year was one of them. But there was a question that I wanted to ask you and get your perspective. And this question is Medicaid expansion. And there's a lot going on, and we don't want to politicize this, but I do want to know from a hospital executive and a CEO as you are, and what you're stewarding. And it is, I think, the life blood of our community in so many ways, and how that came together and all the blessings that come through there, and the staff and the people that run and operate, and all the amazing doctors that are involved. You steward a lot there. And that's so amazing that we have that facility here. What does that look like when you hear things like that from a novice person like me who's wanting to learn and listen as an operator or as a president looking at that for your organization? What does that look like? And what do you see that as?
That topic of Medicaid expansion is a tough one. There's could be split into 2 different bifurcations, I'll call it. The economic and the fiscal impact, and the moral impact. But what happened in the early days of the Affordable Care Act is that hospitals agreed to have money swept out of the Medicare program in order to come back in the back door, you might say, through the Affordable Care Act in states' Medicaid expansion. So reimbursements that were coming to the hospital through Medicare were reduced in order to fund Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. When the Supreme Court ruled that the states could not be held accountable or forced to expand Medicaid because it was a state's right, not a federal right, some states chose not to expand Medicaid, and Kansas is one of those states still holding out. Typically, we're a fiscally conservative state. And so what we would like to do is have more people stand on their own 2 feet, pay their own taxes, right? So from a fiscal conservative approach, one might say, therefore, we will not vote for Medicaid expansion. And by doing that, you, the healthcare providers, should figure out a way to lower your cost of doing business under what any payer will be willing to pay. The money that's been swept out is currently being divided among the other states who have expanded Medicaid. So the money is still, in essence, leaving, but it's being reapportioned to the states that have expanded Medicaid because CMS reimbursements, as a general rule, it's a zero-sum game. So some will win, some will lose. Right now, if just taking Medicaid expansion, Kansas is losing, you might say. Then there's the ethical side of things. Well, we have a certain amount of society that can't. They deserve to have their Medicaid dollars. We need to take care of those who can't. We should expand Medicaid. Newton Medical Center's losses under Medicaid expansion have been great. More than $1 million.
Ouch.
Probably more than $2 million by now in actual reimbursements that have not come into us. So as a CEO, I've advocated for Medicaid expansion, even though in the sum game, the total sum game, we will not be made whole by what's already been taken out.
Right.
Other providers could be hurt, like long-term care facilities. So there's been a great deal of reticence in the long-term care community to advocate for Medicaid expansion because they will probably be disproportionately disadvantaged under expansion. But even a hospital the size of Newton Medical Center, by not being made whole, is still being disproportionately disadvantaged because that the rest of the reimbursement goes to larger hospitals or hospitals that treat presumably more Medicaid patients than we do.
Right.
So it's a tough question. Oof. We've talked to our legislators, and they voted their hearts and they voted their own ethics in the question in the last 2 sessions. So I think the question will come up again in the next legislative session in 2020. We'll see where it leads.
Right.
But I am certain that there will be a continued bifurcation of the opinion in the very end. I'm not certain Kansas is going to cross the line.
Right. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. Thank you for unpacking that and your perspective on that as a steward and a CEO of a company that has to do a job and understanding all different sides. It looks like you're looking at this from a very objective point of view, but at the end of the day, you have to run and make sure you're being fiscally responsible for your organization.
Right. And we know what we have the potential of being paid.
Right.
And so we're like every other business in the world, even though a lot of people don't like to think of hospitals as being businesses. We are like a business in that we have to generate enough revenue to have some money in the bank at the end of the month.
Right.
Because as a not-for-profit, we'd like to reinvest that money in the hospital.
Right.
So for us this year, that's going to mean really unsexy things like new air conditioners.
MRI
for
machines.
The rooftop. An MRI machine, which is kind of sexy, isn't it?
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. But will help so many people with the MRI.
Yes.
But without good air conditioning, our patients wouldn't be very comfortable either. But
I remember getting serviced out there, and I believe y'all used to bring in a van or some kind of a deal, because I used to have to go for my knee, and you would have to schedule, and there was only certain times I could do it. And now you guys are getting people through right away, right?
Right.
So that's a big difference from what I had to do.
Probably one of our more efficient departments, our imaging department.
Yeah.
And we're really lucky. We have a radiologist who's on site and in the office and reading x-rays as fast and as furiously as they can be produced. He's producing results, high quality results, fast
Busy.
to the physicians. Yeah,
Really
we're really
busy.
lucky to have that.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, there's so many great things happening, and some of the partnerships that you're developing with the police station coming in and bringing that office in there, and just the collaboration in the community and the sponsorships that you guys do. It's just unbelievable for me to watch this take place and to just look at the leaders that are stewarding that organization and what it means to Newton and Harvey County as a whole and the surrounding towns. There's a lot going on in that space, and to see you guys capitalizing and growing and knowing that I have no idea, and I don't think I ever will know the tough decisions that have to be made to continue to move that system forward for the greater good of the whole. It's just the birthing center. Is that what do you refer to that there as?
We call it our maternal child unit.
Maternal child unit.
We're probably going to rename that.
Yeah.
Because that needs to be modernized a little bit, don't you think?
Well, yeah.
Maternal child.
I think y'all do an amazing job. And, there's still people that we know that go next door or to other facilities. And it's like, man, we have the greatest and everything right here. And,
we do.
And it's just, continuing to get that word out and the confidence up and everything. It's an unbelievable story of community and the leadership that's there right now. And what you just opened up with, it just blew my mind, right? The levels of stewardship and from the nurses and how you hire and what that means it's a big deal. What are you hungry for, or what are you curious about right now moving forward? What is that?
I could say so many things. Could we come back to that question in a second? Because I just have to say one more thing about the medical center, if there's time.
No, there's time.
You gave kind of a good segue into the hospital as a place with four walls. And we're beginning to talk more about the hospital as a place that is outside those four walls, inside and outside. The hospital will always exist as a place where you can drive up, park your car, and walk in the front door because, face it, you probably won't have a baby or you won't have surgery any place but in the hospital. But there's so many things that we are doing in partnership with the community that, like you said, I think it would be mind-boggling to try to describe all of it. But just to say that a year ago, the board recognized we had a vision statement that said we want to be the choice of healthcare in Newton. That's an inward-looking vision statement, isn't it? That's a vision statement that looked inside our four walls, and it was very exclusive. It excluded everybody else in the community that provides great health care. And so our board decided we're going to have a different vision. Our vision is going to be simply to improve health. And so when you begin to think about being a hospital that has four walls, but exists to improve the health of the community, it begins to show perspective in a different way. And so we are working very hard right now to become a hospital that maybe the walls seem a little more porous to the community. And our partnerships might look something like what you might have read about with Newton Fire and EMS and community paramedicine. Or it could look like some of our staff standing down to resuscitate you at summer days. Or it looks like some kind of a presence with Health Ministries Clinic and ensuring that clinic was standing on its own 2 feet after Via Christi left town.
Yep.
So those are the kinds of things that we're becoming very passionate about. In looking outside our hospital and saying, where is it that someone has a health need in the community? And where there is that need, how do we, maybe not we, Newton Medical Center alone, but how would we partner with Newton Fire and EMS? How would we partner with Health Ministries? How would we partner with the Health Department or with Ember Hope or any number of organizations to bolster the community So I think be watching.
Yes.
In the near future, you're going to see some exciting things happening at the medical center outside our four walls.
Partner and empowering.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like, and I see these, and I don't know how this dovetail or if it does at all, but I was in Halstead the other day and I noticed a health center place downtown.
Health Ministries has
guys,
been in Halstead for a few years.
Yeah, and you see these
Right.
arms is what I call them,
Right.
popping up with
Right.
these, looking at how can you provide more and do more, and almost like mobile.
Right.
How do you
It's
become
a
more mobile?
strength of Harvey County. I will say that. The health organizations in Harvey County actually like each other. And we know each other by first name. And we can pick up the phone and say, we have this problem. In fact, I was an hour and a half long in a meeting with Matt Schmidt at Health Ministries before I came over here this morning. We're trying to unpack a particular problem that the community's having. How do we do it? Who's best to fill that need? It doesn't have to be the hospital, doesn't necessarily need to be Health Ministries, but somebody is going to have to fill the need.
Right.
How do we do this? But we have the complete luxury of not only liking each other, but knowing each other. It was interesting. We participated in a webinar earlier this year, and the webinar was given by the American Hospital Association, and it was to teach hospitals how to have better relationships with their local law enforcement and first responders. And during this webinar, we heard from people from Boston and Chicago and San Francisco saying, you should know the first name of the fire chief. You should invite them over and get to know them, like as people. You should know who the police department leadership is. You should know some of the police. And we were looking around the table at each other in amazement, thinking we should have been up there giving that national webinar, not them. Because that already exists in Harvey County.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
And in that way, the community is very blessed because the leadership knows each other and they get along and they're interested in how do we solve the problem, not who gets to solve the problem. How do we solve the problem? Yeah.
Empowering
It
each
gives
other.
a good perspective.
That's great.
Yes.
That's huge for our whole community on all
It
different
is.
levels. So no matter what you do, we can be part of the solution. Communication, stewarding,
Right.
and then knowing that where are the pieces of the puzzle? Let's put checker pieces out there and let's play and see where the best fit is. So that's the best way I can describe it. But thank you for this message. I mean, geez, that's so much to unpack here over the next week or two. But most individuals that are driven like yourself, there's always something they're curious about or pushing forward. And I know leadership is just a given, and you have to deal with your team and all the dynamics. But is there any one thing that you're after right now? Where's your curiosity as far as going forward in the future?
I thought about this question a lot. Here's what I'm curious about. In all honesty, here's my first answer. It has nothing to do with leadership.
Right on.
It has to do with the human genome. What are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with the ethics of genetic therapy? What are we going to do with gene splicing? China's facing that issue right now. There was some philandering with a scientist who messed with unborn babies' genes. And so the world is trying to answer these questions, and I'm curious how this will come out someday. But I'm very curious about some of the therapies. My older grandson has Fragile X syndrome, and so he has a genetic defect. He has a weakened gene on his X chromosome. And so it has resulted in mental retardation and some issues for him. And so I'm wondering who the person is that's alive today. I believe that person is alive. I believe that person is probably at least college age or above that's going to figure this out, that will figure out how to fix the gene that fails to produce the protein which traps him in his body that won't work the way it's supposed to, and his mind that won't think the way it's supposed to. So I pray for that person every day, that soon their research will come to light, because there's great hope for my grandson to be helped if they can just figure the right thing. His neurons don't work. It's not that they're destroyed or that they've been damaged. It's that they just don't work. And so with the right therapy, maybe his neurons can work someday. So that fascinates me.
Yes.
That maybe by the time before I have to go,
Yeah.
that I will see him be cured. Maybe not cured, but helped,
Yeah.
And maybe they'll have a fix for the mothers and the fathers who carry the defect, that they won't have to have a baby who has Fragile X syndrome anymore. But it could extend to so many other things, AT or CF or so many other diseases that just vex us at the moment. I think with the Genome Project and some of the genomics, the CRISPR technology, some of these really phantasmagorical things that we never thought could be possible, they're at our fingertips now. I think we're so close. And I want to see how this plays out. I want to live long enough to see it play out.
The fact that it's a focus, right?
Yes.
I mean, and that we're getting so good and we have so many great people narrowcasting and really driving down those little pieces that are just so important to us living longer and being healthier in different ways and having different opportunities, because we get this assistance. And then to the point of, well, if you can stop it with the parents and correct it there.
Wouldn't that be something?
What a beautiful place.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, I was listening to another podcast and they were discussing this, and it's just, some people think it's tinfoil hat stuff, and no, we've got people out there right now working on this.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah.
We've cured some things, I think, in the medical sciences with CRISPR-9 and some of these other genetic technologies that the public doesn't know about yet.
It's coming.
If you watch some of the early studies with some of the enrollees, it looks like they could be cured. They just don't have enough of a longitudinal focus yet to be able to announce it to the world, but it is so promising.
Wow.
Aren't we lucky?
We are so lucky.
Yes.
I believe we have our own set of issues, but we are alive at one of the most opportunistic times ever in all different areas. And it's kind of like get out there, get creative, find a niche and fill it.
Yep.
And I'm just blessed to be alive to watch it all happen. We've got so much ahead of us. Is there anything you want to do to leave the audience, or any message that you have for us to end this?
Just come to Newton Medical Center when you need us. We are standing at the ready.
Awesome.
And we're passionate for your health and your wellness.
Thank you for what you do.
You're welcome.
Thank you and your team. You guys are amazing. And Harvey County Digital episode 15 with Val. We're out.